So welcome back. We are navigating those big emotions that kids have, whether they're screaming and kicking, yelling and fighting, pushing back, saying no, all the ways that kids can experience their big emotions. We have to remember that our little ones have limited life experience. They're 2, they're 3, they're 4, 12, even at 18. And I've got a 21 and a soon 24-year-old. Even them are having big emotions they need to navigate, and I'm still coaching and helping them. So what I want you to understand, parents, is that this is a lifelong skill for not only your children, but also for yourself. And it's amazing how much what we do in front of our children around our feelings, what we do with anger, what we do with hurt, what we do with fear, what we do with sadness, makes an incredibly deep impression on the children about whether emotions are okay, how we can handle them, whether or not there's a way to express that emotion, and if so, whether it's safe to do so, whether it's acceptable, whether it will be accommodated, held, loved, moved through, made use of, or will it create damage and trauma and injury, to relationships and to other people and even to property sometimes, right? Or limit opportunity. And so one of the things that we focus on in Raising Our Resilience events, Raising Our Resilience coaching, Raising Our Resilience year-long family foundations immersion, is emotional mastery on the skills that lead children to have more self-awareness, lead them to have healthy forms of self-expression, lead them to have tools to cope and manage their emotions, self-management skills as well. And this is one of the biggest pillars of raising resilient children. Some of you may be familiar with my work that I have 7 pillars of raising resilient children. Emotional mastery is number 1. It's the first. And I believe that without emotional mastery, without continuing to tend to the emotional garden, so to speak, of ourselves and our children, all the rest doesn't really do what we want it to do, whether it's a set of rules that we want to establish a sense of respect, whether it's family like routines and rituals and things that help us to connect. But if the emotional piece is not tended to, the rest of it tends to fall flat. And if you can relate to what I'm saying, go ahead and write something in the comments right now to share with me perhaps a time where you notice this to be true. You're like, yeah, when my kid is having a hard time and melting down, like it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter if I reinforce the kind. If I'm like, let's be kind, it doesn't really work. Like I need to know how to navigate those bigger emotions and really help my child have a healthy response to their own feelings and to the frustrations and sadnesses and losses, things that will come up in life. If you can relate to that, go ahead and put something in the comments just so I know you're here. Say hi, say Vanessa tuning in from El Cerrito, for example, I might say, right? So put in your city and the ages of your kids. And that way I know that you're here. And then also let me know, one way that your kids' emotions can sometimes really send you over the edge, whether it's because it makes you shut down and give up, if you have that helpless feeling, whether it makes you flare up and maybe yell or act out in a way that you might feel guilty about later, or just like not really happy that you had to go there. Let me know what is happening in the emotional world with your children that's especially hard or especially tricky. Okay, let me know. Put it in the comments. And so for me, it might be like giving in and giving up is really a part that's the way that I respond to when my kids have big emotions. I can kind of give in and give up. At other times I might actually act out and double down and get really stubborn. It's another way that I might react to it. So let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, ages of kids, and something that comes up for you when your kids have big emotions. How do you tend to respond to it? It's actually a really important piece. And it's something we went over in our Navigating Meltdowns webinar a couple of weeks ago. And what we were able to find and notice is that you know, when we are, when we're in the situation where kids are having big emotions, often it also triggers us and brings up a lot for us, right? Where we're not necessarily out of our best. We might, like I said, give in or act up or act out. It doesn't always go well. When we're in the situation where kids are having big emotions, often it also triggers us and brings up a lot for us, right? Where we're not necessarily at our best. We might, like I said, give in or act up or act out. It doesn't always go well, let's just say. So I'd love to hear about that in your, you know, in your comments here. Just let me know what happens for you. Give me a sense of how I can guide you. And one of the things that I want to emphasize here, and that I really want you to know, is that it's really, it can be really tricky to know when what to say in the moment when the kids are having their meltdowns or are upset, right? It's not always clear what to do. And so one of the things that, you know, we can always get a little stuck on is like, what, you know, is this the time where I comfort my child, or is this the time where I lay down the law? You know, is this the time where I back off and give them space or not? And we're not going to be able to answer every single scenario in this quick tip video. We're only going to be on for a few more minutes. But what I want you to have first, and we're going to do a series of these over the next few weeks leading up to a big Facebook challenge. We're going to do a Calm Parent Facebook challenge. What I want to do over the next few weeks is just give you an idea of what you might do during the time when the kids are upset, but maybe not completely crossing the line. Like they're not fully in that like kick hit mode, right? Screaming mode where they're starting to yell at you or stomp, you know, like slam doors. When kids are upset, but not all the way there yet. Now, this is something that can also be useful when the kids are that upset. You can also use this strategy that I'm sharing with you when they're that upset, but you might need to combine it with also addressing some troubling behavior if they are kind of going to an extreme. Okay, you may also need to, you know, address it like with some logic and some reasoning if they're actually not, their lid is more on, as we say in Raising Our Resilience. So when I'm talking about that time that we were calling in our webinar, in our Navigating Meltdowns webinar, Act 1, where their lid is off, but it's not all the way off. They're not totally, you know, in kind of feral beast mode, I lovingly like to call it. And they're not like just kind of a little upset and still able to process, you know, intellectually. They're in that other state where it's big enough, but it hasn't completely gone out of control. And that we call Act 1 of a meltdown or tantrum, or kind of escalated power struggle. And in this Act 1 time, we're going to want to coach them emotionally, directly to their emotions. You know, we're not necessarily going to want to do some of the things that a lot of smart parents do that doesn't really help much, which is, for example, try to ask a kid, why did you do that? We talked about that last week in the Real Talk with Real Parents. We're like, why did you do that? You know, how come you hit your sister? Why? You know, and trying to get a kid to fess up and explain like exactly what their motive was in the moment when they're upset is incredibly is like an uphill battle. Like that part of the brain isn't even necessarily firing. And also they haven't had the time to really reflect. And maybe they will give you a reason, but it's not like the reason behind the reason. Like, for example, it could be like, she touched my stuff, you know, and it's like, well, you know, someone touching your stuff doesn't upset you as much as she's been touching my stuff for 3 days now. I've been telling her to stop. I've even asked her nicely. I've been really patient and she's still doing it, right? That's like more the real reason. And another thing could be like, and I need a break. Like, and then you can get to that deeper need, right? Like I need a break from my sister. I cannot be with her 24/7 in the same room. Like, and then you can go towards a solution like, oh, we need to have more one-on-one time with the kids where they're in separate rooms and give them some space, you know, throughout the day. And then you can change the routine and you can kind of get the kids on board with like this quiet time where they get a break from each other. There's all this stuff that comes from that. Yes, we get there. But before we get there, there's this zone of upset where the kids really are not able to problem solve through like that. And we as parents just love to fix our kids' problems. We do. We're like, oh, we'll just do this, or like, oh, come over here, or, you know, and we love to like, or get them to fix it now, right? Like, we'll just share, you know, like jump to the solution. But if they're still upset, what we're doing is we're actually ignoring the fact that there's an emotional experience happening. And we're missing an opportunity. I'm going to say this again. We're missing an opportunity They say that emotionally coached kids from like, especially like a warm and connected parent who also has high expectations or demands of their kids, have better grade point averages, do better in school, get into the colleges of their choice more often. That's just the academics. Socially, less anxiety, and emotionally, less anxiety and depression in adolescence. More likely to report life satisfaction as a child, a teen, and a young adult. They have better friendships and a wider support network, that helps them be resilient during hard times. So yes, emotion coaching, and yes, an opportunity. Oh, my kid's upset. Woo, an opportunity to coach my child emotionally. You're like, Vanessa, that's not it. That's too much. I'm like, well, then just put a bookmark on that. For now, let's just talk about what you actually do and what you say. So here we go. When you're in Act 1, you're again going to address the emotional needs first and directly coach them about their emotions. For some of us, this is hard. We don't want to talk about feelings. We don't want to name them. We don't have a model for how to do this. Well, here's a model. And you don't have to do all of these things, and you don't have to do them in this order. These are all just suggestions. They'll tell you from thousands of interactions with kids while they're upset, mentoring dozens of people, now speaking to audiences of 300-500 people on these kinds of topics, having done my own research on this, having looked at other people's research on this, having read every book I can about emotional intelligence, and everything says these things work. They really do help kids. Okay, so here we go. First thing, help the kids tune into their bodies and the sensations they're having. Okay, so tune into the body is step one. And for example, I'm noticing your face is getting red and your hands are in fists. Just simply. And maybe they'll be like, oh, right? Bringing attention to it, because maybe they don't notice. Another way you could say, instead of I notice, is do you notice that? Or look at your hands right now. What are they doing? Yeah, so bringing attention to their body so they can tune in. And they often will realize that they have tension, they have tears, maybe they're like hiding, right? Like, I'm noticing you're underneath the table, and hiding and making it into a little ball. If it's something they're experiencing, like some fear or some shame or withdrawal, right? In that way. And then having them name the emotion. Now, it could be that your child might not like having their emotion named for them. So then you're going to have to be really sensitive about saying, you look mad, because you're like, stop telling me I'm mad. No, I don't. No, I don't. You could say, oh, so I come to it with a bit more sideways, a little more curious, like two different ways you can do that. Like, I know that when I ball up my hand, sometimes that means I'm really angry, and wait and see if they soften, like, yeah, I'm angry too. Or I wonder if that means you might be feeling A, B, or C, like angry, scared, or, some kind of upset. And they'd be like, maybe they'll soften and go, yeah, and then they'll share with you what's going on, right? If they're ones who will never answer a question, then sometimes it helps to actually say what you think it is directly, right? Because if you say, how are you feeling, honey? Tell me. And they're like, that's like the worst question for them, right? They don't want to be asked. Then you can say, wow, sometimes when I see faces that look like yours right now, it makes me think that maybe they're sad, or maybe they're angry, or maybe they're scared, right? I'm thinking maybe that's how you're feeling. Nod your head yes, if that's true, right? Like, you don't even have to make them talk, right? Or you could say, hold up a little finger if they're making a little ball, So they don't necessarily need to, like, straight on, eye to eye, address it and be seen in their worst, most painful state. Yeah. The other thing that has kind of a little nuance is that, you want to be able to validate their emotion. If you haven't been able to name it yet, or they're not interested in naming it, you can just validate it in a more general sense. So the way with naming the emotion, you might say, wow, that looks frustrating. I'm imagining you're frustrated. Maybe your sister hasn't been listening to you that well about not touching your stuff. That would be frustrating for me too. And just sort of laying it out of like, yeah, that makes sense. Pick one thing that makes sense about it. Does it make sense? Does it have to make sense to you that they hid under the table and they won't talk to you? No, I'm saying, like, it makes sense that you're doing all of this outlier behavior, like all this out there behavior. It's just the feeling that you're validating. Okay. And who doesn't like to hear that? Like, yeah, that's frustrating. That's a friend you call. when you're upset. And you want to be like that for your kid, right? You don't call the friend who's like, well, you really should have thought of that first, you know? And it's like, oh, well, thanks a lot. Right? You'll call the friend who's saying, oh my gosh, yeah, that's hard. That makes sense. And then maybe you'll get to the place where you get to problem solve, like, well, what do you think you could have, like, do you think there's something you could have done differently, right? You can get there, but you can't, when you start there, it doesn't exactly show empathy and concern and connection and doesn't build that trust. Yeah. So validating it quickly. So this can go real fast. All right. So 1, 2, 3. Wow, I've noticed you're really frowning and your hands are kind of clenched. Did you see that? Do you see that too? I wonder if that means you're like feeling angry or upset right now. I know that's what my body can look like and feel like when I'm angry and upset. Well, that kind of makes sense. I've noticed your sister's been, really bothering you and not really letting you build your Legos. Yeah, that looks hard. That makes sense to me. Already, I mean, I don't know if you feel relief, but like I feel relief hearing those words. I'm a sensitive person and big feelings, and I was a big emotion kid, straight up like run into my room and cry into my pillow screaming kind of kid. And a lot of us have those. A lot of you are in this group, those of you who are actually in the parent group and aren't listening on the business page, on the Raising Resilience page, have joined and said mood management. Like I was going through the responses of folks who had answered the registration questions. And I think it was 80 of you who had said mood management was top concern and top skill you wanted to learn. Yeah, makes sense, right? That's why it's number 1, emotional mastery. So that's 1, 2, 3, right? It's like body, name the emotion, tune into the body, name the emotion, validate the emotion. And then a lot of times parents stop right there. And that to me is a big loss, because there are other pieces that you can follow up with, because sometimes they soften and they're with you and it's good. And like you get to get in there and help them with the soothing thing. But the next thing you want to help them do is really like come up with some kind of strategy for self-regulation. Like what do we do with frustration? What do we do with anger? What do we do with sadness? What do we do with grief, right? What are my options? And oftentimes that's hard. And sometimes it's not even a do, it's just a feel. Like get to sit with it and feel this hard stuff and know that it's safe and you have someone who loves you right with you, and it's, you're going to get through this. Kids don't often know, and we don't even know sometimes, that like we're going to actually get to the other side of this feeling. We're going to survive it. We're going to move through it. We're not just in it. Although kids will say, I always this and I'll never this and you always, right? We get into this moment is every moment kind of space, but really it's not true. And if we can hold that for them and say, look, there's a way through it. Maybe we can breathe. And that's why we have the calming strategies, right? That handout that a lot of you opted into. If you don't have it, it's a free gift. Chaos, 2, calm.gra.com. And I can put that in the comments too. So what you'll notice is that, oh, Mary Ann is here. Great. I'll put it in the comments so it's easy for you to get to. So what you're going to do is in this moment, you're going to want to make sure that, you give them some options of ways that they can calm down. And sometimes you give them 1 or 2. And if they get overwhelmed by the options, you might just try space, or you might just pick something for them or with them. With is even better. How many of you would love to say, like, if you're like, oh, I'm feeling kind of depressed lately, and someone goes, well, you really should go take a walk. And you're like, okay, that's a good idea, I guess, right? But what if they say, how about if you come join me for a walk in an hour? I'd love to hear more about this while we move and get some exercise. And then you go, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. So inviting them into the strategy. And you can check out the 6 strategies in the guide, and I'll also be doing a special training on it next month. Yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to have make it into a challenge and a game so that we all practice all 6 strategies. It's going to be a lot of fun. So much to say, okay, so you get through, get something to get that lid back on, some kind of calming strategy. And then lastly, and this is really key, we don't always do this, now check in about the feeling and help them connect the dots that you feel this way, anger, frustration, sadness, fear, upset. And then you took the time to tune into that emotion and do something about it, whether it's to sit with it or to move through it with using one of the strategies. And then you get to feel better on the other side of it. And then you can tune into your body again. So it's like the before and after, those before and after photos. It's like, how were you before? How are you now? How did you do that? And it's a learning process, right? Like, oh, if I start here and I'm here again, I can do this thing again, this tool, this strategy to feel better. So it might sound something like, I've really noticed that your hands have softened and your face is, soft, like isn't frowning so much. It even looks like you have a little bit of a smile on your face now. I wonder if you're feeling better. Oh, so it really worked for you to take a break and go into the calm down corner, or it really worked for you to take some breaths and try again. It really worked for you to do that tense and release thing that we've been practicing. The little shell and the big star. Wow, you feel so, it seems like you feel much better. How do you feel? And just giving them the opportunity to notice of like, oh, self-awareness and self-management of like, I did that. And I've got this tool that works. It's kind of like, oh, you finally remembered to exchange, carry the one, or you finally remembered to cross out the number in math. And you're like, it worked. It's the same kind of thing of like, oh, a skill, it worked, right? Let's use it again. Let's add that to our toolbox. Very last, it's check and see if they're ready, right? Check for readiness. Just say, and even, so it seems like you might be ready to go back into the playroom with your sister. Do you think that you're ready? And that helps them to just, again, retune in. How am I? Am I good? Am I ready? And then this is often the opener for problem solving. Yeah, but I really want her to listen to me this time. Yes, great. It's like, oh, so much better than she never listens to me. Oh my gosh, throw this. It's like, wow, we've come, that's amazing. We came so far and we came through it. Now this whole thing can happen in definitely less than 20 minutes, often 5 or less minutes, okay? Now, if you're having meltdowns and tantrums 2, 3, 4 times a day, and it's intense and it's hard, I want you to reach out to me, okay? Don't wait. Let's get you out of the daily loops. All right. I want you to try these strategies, but I also would like to help you directly. So you're going to head over to the parent discovery quiz and fill it out and apply for a session. I just have 3 left this week. So if you hear this video today, go ahead and apply. And even if this round of sessions is closed, I will put you at the top of the wait list for my next round of sessions in a couple weeks. Okay. You'll be my number 1 priority person to get to. So go ahead and head over to the quiz, fill it out, apply for the session. And as long as you've got enough stuff going on and a high level of commitment to changing it, it qualifies you for the session, okay? It's not too hard. And it's really helpful to kind of do that thought process of, where am I with emotional mastery? Where am I with motivation mastery? Do I need to look at my routines, or do I need to look more at setting limits? Do I maybe need all of this? And maybe I'd be a great fit for Vanessa's year-long program. We're going to find out together. And we're also going to get you some tools and strategies that you can use right away, so you don't have to wait, okay? So go ahead and head over to that. Thank you for joining me this week. Really good to have you here at Monday Parent Mindsets. If you're listening to the recording, just feel free to comment into the comments. Let me know what you got out of this, so I know what your takeaways were, so you can integrate that into your next steps and into your learning and into your whole tool chest of parenting tips and parenting skills and parenting tools. Such an honor to be here with you. Our group is growing strong. If you want to head over to the invite box on the side, if you have a few folks in your world that would love these tips and strategies, I'm going to continue coming in here and giving lots of tips and strategies, especially during shelter in place, and especially during our transition back to whatever comes next. So hopefully you all are well. I would love to hear from you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.